It's a Wednesday in November 2023. I'm standing in a dark restaurant in San Francisco. There are a few dozen people. It's the after party for an AI conference. People are standing and chatting in small circles. Waiters are bringing trays of hors d'oeuvres around. I'm biting into a tiny porcini mushroom donut when I hear a whisper. Sam Altman has walked into the restaurant. I try to spot him in the dim lighting. I've talked to Sam here and there over the years. He's been around the startup scene for more than a decade, and he's friendly to journalists. And over time, Sam Altman has become basically the most Silicon Valley man alive. He's the CEO of OpenAI, which shot to tech stardom a year ago with the release of ChatGPT. His company is worth $86 billion. It's one of the most valuable startups in the world. For the past 6 months, Sam had been everywhere. It seemed like every major news outlet wanted to profile him, and he was saying yes to each one. Headlines referred to him as the ChatGPT king, the Oppenheimer of our age, and an AI overlord. He was like an ambassador for the AI future, zipping around the globe, meeting with world leaders. He testified in front of Congress. And amid all that, he decided to pop by this AI conference party, a little surprise visit. So I see him standing in a corner of the restaurant. A few people have already clustered around him. I decide to say hi. He's wearing a suit and a tie, more dressed up than usual. And he's shorter than I remember. We shake hands. He eyes my conference badge and says, "It's good to see you." I'm surprised by how personable he is, how friendly he comes across. He acts like he remembers me. He already knows I'm working on this podcast, so I say to him, "I'm about to put in a request to your comms team to see if we can find a time to interview you." He's like, "Sure, sounds good." Several people are hovering, hoping to get his attention for a minute, so I step away. And after about 10 minutes at the party, he leaves too. The next day, Sam continues his tour as the statesman of AI. He speaks at APEC, a big conference that President Biden and China's leader Xi Jinping both attended. Here's Sam at that conference talking about AI.
I think this will be the most transformative and beneficial technology humanity has yet invented. I think this is like the greatest leap forward of any of the big technological revolutions we've had so far. So I'm super excited. I can't imagine anything more exciting to work on. And getting to do that is like the professional honor of a lifetime. It's so fun to get to work on that.
The most transformative technology humanity has yet invented. The professional honor of a lifetime. Sam clearly believes the world is about to change dramatically and fast. And he's aware that a lot of that change is connected to him. And the day after that, less than 48 hours after I saw Sam at that party, less than 24 hours after he spoke at a major international gathering of world leaders, he was fired.
Breaking news, Sam Altman is out as CEO of OpenAI.
This is a stunner.
The tech world has been thrown into chaos over the weekend when the company that gave us ChatGPT fired its CEO. The move came as a complete surprise to everyone, including OpenAI's biggest investor, Microsoft.
The board says it pushed Altman out after a review found he was, quote, not consistently candid in his communications with the board.
It's hard to emphasize enough how shocking this was. Sam Altman got fired? It was the juiciest tech news of the year and completely unexpected. The news came on a Friday afternoon, and my colleagues and I all immediately knew our weekends were out the window. The next few days felt like a hurricane of news. The board implied Sam had lied to them. They announced a new CEO. Then came a regretful public apology by someone who had fired Sam. There were pledges of loyalty, an employee revolt. And at the same time, something else was happening. It started to seem like Sam was actually going to come back. He was rallying the support of his employees and Microsoft. It was looking like Sam could win. On Tuesday night, Sam was reinstated as CEO at the company that, just 5 days earlier, had basically tried to destroy him. Sam managed to get the upper hand once again. It was high drama, a jaw-dropping turn of events. But for those who know Sam, it actually made perfect sense. One of Sam's mentors is an investor named Paul Graham. He once told a reporter, Sam is extremely good at becoming powerful. To me, this seems like Sam's defining characteristic. Often in Silicon Valley, we talk about tech visionaries who are programming geniuses or obsessed with the details and design of the product. That's not Sam. His strongest, most unique skill is wielding power. And that might have consequences for all of us. You're listening to Foundering. I'm Ellen Huet. In this season of Foundering, we're going to chronicle the rise of Sam Altman, the all-out arms race to build the leading AI company, the claim that this new technology could threaten to wipe out all of humanity if we're not careful, and then the coup that almost took down the guy at the top of it all before he managed to claw his way back. For this season, you'll hear reporting done by me and my colleagues at Bloomberg, who have been covering AI during the boom of the last few years. We interviewed some of the leading minds in AI to try to cut through the hype and understand the debate about whether AI will be a tool to improve human existence or to extinguish it. But this is also the story of Sam, the man at the center of it all. And we spoke with Sam's friends, family, and collaborators to demystify him and how he rose to power. This first episode is all about how Sam got here. He's a man who has always understood the importance of being in the right room at the right time with exactly the right few people. The full story of Sam's rise is important because understanding who he is and what he believes will shed light on an urgent question. Should we trust this man to oversee this technology? In the summer of 2023, about 5 months before he was fired, my colleague Emily Chang asked him this exact question at a Bloomberg conference.
You have an incredible amount of power at this moment in time. Why should we trust you?
You shouldn't. If this really works, it's like quite a powerful technology, and you should not trust one company and certainly not one person with
it. You shouldn't trust me. If he believes that, then why did Sam fight his way right back to the top of OpenAI, back into that position of control? As if to insist he should be the person to lead this company as they develop AI as fast as possible. To a lot of people, the stakes are terrifying. They're higher than anything else, really. In the Valley, some people refer to artificial general intelligence, or AGI, as the last invention. Something so potent that everything that comes after will look unrecognizable compared to everything leading up to it. Inside OpenAI, some employees talk about how they are building God. We'll be right back. To get a better sense of the kind of person Sam is and how he got where he is now, I want to take you back to his adolescence. Sam had a privileged upbringing in St. Louis. He's the oldest of 4 siblings. His mom was a dermatologist. His dad was a real estate developer. He attended a private high school called John Burroughs. There's an anecdote about him from that period that sticks out. When some students wanted to boycott an assembly about sexuality, Sam stood up in front of the whole school and announced he was gay. It's a pretty gutsy move for a teenager in the early 2000s. And unsurprisingly, Sam was smart.
And generally, Sam, he was an exceptional student. He was an exceptional writer. He was an exceptional, big personality.
That's Andy Abbott. He was one of Sam's English teachers, and he's now the head of school. And this is a pretty nerdy school where it's cool to get good grades and be a high achiever. And even in that environment, Sam stood out.
Sam's just a really natural leader, incredibly charismatic, curious guy. He's atypical. He was the editor of the yearbook, and he represented the school in the Model United Nations. He designed our website, before we hired people to do our website. He could just do that stuff.
Sam even played water polo.
He was pretty good. I'm not a connoisseur, but he was pretty good.
He remembers Sam as being really confident, and apparently for good reason. Sounds like Sam was just this exceptional kid.
Well, he's the smartest guy in the room, and he's charismatic. I remember thinking, and this is just an embarrassing confession, I hope he doesn't go into technology. He's so creative, and he's such a good writer, and I hoped he would be an author or something like that. And I mean, nobody could have anticipated the magnitude of OpenAI, but everybody knew that this guy's better at most things than most of us are.
This speaks to a pattern that'll become a crucial factor in Sam's career. He's very good at impressing people, especially the right people, older people, people with influence, people who are in a position to help him. Someone who knows Sam says his superpower is figuring out who's in charge and charming them. So we have young Sam. Even though he was a teenager, he acted like someone older with more agency and confidence. Adults found this quality of his admirable. And he acted like this toward his 3 younger siblings, too. In a big New Yorker profile on Sam, his younger brother said that as kids, they used to play a board game called Samurai. And Sam always won because he declared himself the leader and said, "I have to win, and I'm in charge of everything." When Sam's brother told this story, it was a jocular exchange. But Annie, their youngest sibling and only sister, sees it differently. These days, she's estranged from Sam and the rest of her immediate family. But when she was a kid, she remembered that same quality of Sam's, wanting to be in charge. And to her, it wasn't funny. It was domineering.
From my perspective, with the 9-year age difference, he very much wanted to be and acted like the third parent and liked being the older sibling in charge and control.
For instance, even though the family was Jewish, they used to get a Christmas tree until Sam put his foot down.
I don't have memories of a Christmas tree because when Sam got bar mitzvahed at 13, he decided that we, as a family unit, were Jews and needed to no longer celebrate Christmas. There were no more Christmas trees.
When their dad passed away in 2018, Annie remembers that Sam dictated to each of his younger siblings how many minutes they could talk at the funeral.
To be at your dad's funeral, to be like, oh, I'm the oldest sibling, so I get to choose how long all the siblings, which it is bizarre, and there's a level of it that's so hilarious and so benign, surface level, classic older sibling bullshit, where it's like, all right, older sibling wanting to like make up the rules to the game. Like there's a level of it that's very light and funny, and there's also a level of it that's very dark and deeply unsettling of how does that behavior come up in other places if you believe that you get to be the authority on something that you are not the authority on.
A spokeswoman for OpenAI told us that Sam recalls these incidents differently, but she declined to elaborate. And so when Sam finished high school, he started down this path that's pretty textbook for the tech industry, studying computer science at Stanford, founding a startup, and dropping out of Stanford. And he made one incredibly important decision. He applied to Y Combinator. Y Combinator is a startup accelerator. It's basically a boot camp for startups. You and your co-founders apply, and if you're accepted, you spend 3 months hacking away trying to build a company. At the end of that period, you give a demo to investors and try to raise venture capital. Sam was actually in the first ever group of founders at Y Combinator. Everyone calls it YC, by the way. It was 2005, so YC was totally unknown, just a bunch of young guys hanging out in Cambridge, Massachusetts for a summer writing code. But YC would eventually become this enormously powerful network. Now, it's basically the #1 elite program for startups. It's really hard to get in, and the alumni network is incredibly strong. Sam was 19 years old when he joined YC. And once again, he impressed just the right person, Paul Graham, the head of YC. The first batch included some other really impressive people, like the founders of Reddit and Twitch. But someone who knows Sam says that he was immediately Paul's favorite. Paul later wrote, "Within about 3 minutes of meeting him, I remember thinking, so this is what Bill Gates must have been like when he was 19. The startup Sam was building was called Looped. Looped is one of the forgotten apps of its time, the early 2000s, when people were really excited about having GPS on their phones for the first time. It used location data to connect people to their friends and local businesses, kind of like a mix of Yelp and Foursquare. Here's Sam making the pitch at a developers conference.
Looped is about connecting with people on the go, which is, after all, the main reason you have a phone. We show you where people are, what they're doing, and what cool places are around you.
Sam started building the startup in 2005. The iPhone didn't exist yet. So Looped was trying to do this for flip phones. And it was kind of hard to get traction. At one point early on, Sam's company was in a desperate situation. They really needed to get a deal with a mobile carrier. They learned that Boost Mobile, which was part of Sprint, was looking to add a location feature and needed a partner. But they were about to sign with someone else. So Sam flew down to Boost's headquarters in Irvine in Southern California. When he tells this story, he says that he just showed up, waited outside the right executive's office, and asked for just 10 minutes. Here's how that executive remembers it.
As I recall, I got a phone call from Sam when he was in Irvine, and he explained who he was and what Looped was. Somebody at Sprint had told him to get in touch with us.
That's Lowell Weiner. He was, at the time, the head of business development for Boost. And he's going to tell a story that has a few asides, but that I think captures a lot about what Sam was like early on.
We were a day or two away from signing a contract with another startup that was further along than Looped. He asked to come by that day, which is incredibly unusual. But given the timing that, we were at the 11th hour, we were about to sign this contract. He had come, referred to us by our parent company. It was worth at least a meeting. So Sam shows up at the office with one or two other guys from Looped. We go sit in the conference room. We share what we were looking to do. Sam started to share about Looped. He was, I think, 19 at the time. I think maybe in cargo shorts, sitting cross-legged in a chair in the conference room, and just kind of holding court.
I want to pause here for a second on this cargo shorts detail. For a lot of Sam's young life, he was a cargo shorts devotee, wore them all the time. People kind of poked fun at him for it, to the point where he felt the need to address it on a podcast called Masters of Scale.
Honestly, I don't think they're that ugly, and I find them incredibly convenient. Like, you can put a lot of stuff. I still read paperback books. I like paperback books. I like to carry one around with me. I have a iPhone 7 Plus, which is kind of works really well in cargo pockets. I carry computer chargers, cables. They're just efficient. Why people care about that so much, that I can't tell you.
That last comment, that's very Sam. To remark that the things normal people might talk about don't make sense or aren't rational. It's like he has no patience for the things most of us might think are funny. He has more important things to think about. Anyway, here he is, a 19-year-old in a meeting with mobile network executives, wearing cargo shorts, sitting cross-legged in a conference room chair. Even though this encounter was almost 20 years ago, Lowell remembers vividly what Sam looked like in that moment because it was such an odd picture.
He was small in stature. I don't think he's a big guy now, but he was quite slim at the time. It's no easy feat to sit cross-legged in a conference chair. I mean, he looked like he could have still been in high school.
I've heard other people describe Sam's weird way of sitting. He's older now, so he doesn't do it as much. But one person who knows him told me he used to squat on the seat of a chair, like a perched bird, with his knees up toward his chin. Despite this unconventional way of presenting himself, or because of it, he almost immediately convinced Lowell that Boost Mobile should switch plans at the 11th hour and go with this other partner.
It was pretty clear within a half hour of this meeting starting that Looped and Sam were the right partner to do this. There was both excitement and shit, we have to go sell it internally. But I recall stepping outside of the room with the colleague that I was in the meeting with and saying to him, we need to switch gears.
And Lowell still remembers this way that Sam looks unassuming, but he's not.
On the one hand, visually, he looked incredibly young. But if you'd shut your eyes and were just listening to him, his command of material and his ability to communicate and engage was on par with anyone, I had met with over the course of my tech career. It was freakish. yeah, it was freakish. And not his appearance, but his poise and command for that age.
Sam's relentlessness paid off. He knew he had to get that deal, and he did what he needed to do to get it, including flying across the state to surprise someone at their office. Sam later said he learned an important lesson. The way to get things done is to just be really persistent. So he inks this deal for Looped. It's going to power location sharing for Boost Mobile. It's the partnership that led to this 2006 ad campaign.
Yo, you see where I'm at?
Yeah, but I know where you at.
Boost Looped with GPS. Now you know where your friends are at.
Sam's peers at YC were surprised that he pulled this off. Looped's business model was pretty wobbly, and the product wasn't all that impressive. But Sam's particular strength was starting to become clear.
It was obvious Sam was an incredible deals guy.
That's a clip from a podcast interview with Emmett Shear, one of the other guys in that very first YC batch. You can hear how impressed he was by Sam's particular talent.
Like he was somehow convincing the phone companies to give him his startup that didn't really have a product, deals. I still don't know how he did that. And that was the only obvious thing about Sam at the time was that he was ambitious, but most of us were pretty ambitious, and he was great deals guy.
For the next few years, Looped kept growing. Sam presented at Apple's developer conference in 2008 in a very unique outfit. He wore 2 polo shirts layered on top of each other. So he's in a hot pink polo with a second lime green collar poking out underneath.
I'd like to invite up Sam Altman. Sam?
Thanks, Scott. We are incredibly psyched about Looped on the iPhone. Looped is about connecting with people and what cool places are around you. The orange pin up there is where I am right now, and the blue pins represent my friends. We make serendipity happen.
And when you listen to Sam pitching Looped, you can hear this other part of him, this earnestness and optimism. I've listened to and read a lot of interviews with Sam, and he's always using the words super and excited, sometimes super excited.
It's super cool. Super easy to make. Super important.
It's been super great. I'm super excited to announce.
I'm super excited. Super excited for that.
But he was not super excited about what happened next at Looped. After several years, Looped fizzled out. Sam made a deal to sell the company for a modest sum in 2012. He walked away with a reported $5 million. Most people would be pretty happy with this outcome. But in Silicon Valley terms, Looped was kind of a failure. But that's okay, because by then, Sam had won over other people who could help him. One was Peter Thiel, who was a billionaire and investor and the co-founder of PayPal and Palantir. He's also one of the most powerful gay men in Silicon Valley, which lent him and Sam a sense of camaraderie. When Sam left Looped, Peter gave him a bunch of money to invest. They were close, and Sam's peers noticed. Because Peter Thiel is notoriously pessimistic and even nihilistic. And Sam's public image, by contrast, is pretty earnest and optimistic. At the same time, Sam was deepening his relationship with Paul Graham, the head of YC. And that closeness was giving Sam tangible benefits. When Paul had the chance to invest very early on in Stripe, the payments startup, he invited Sam to invest too. Sam later said that was, by some measures, his most profitable angel investment ever. And he got it purely because of this personal relationship he had built. Paul is known for writing essays about how to build startups, essays filled with blunt, quotable, entrepreneurial wisdom. Often in those essays, he praised Sam. He advised young, eager founders to emulate Sam. And Paul is also responsible for one of the most infamous quotes about Sam. You could parachute him into an island full of cannibals and come back in 5 years, and he'd be the king. At first, this quote sounded to me like a compliment. But lately, I've wondered if maybe it's not. Anyway, around 2012, YC had become very influential. It had relocated its headquarters from Cambridge to Silicon Valley and was now a breeding ground for some of the most successful internet businesses. Airbnb, Dropbox, and Stripe all got their start at YC. And from the outside, it looked as though Sam was beginning to mimic Paul as a startup guru. He was also advising young founders at YC. And just like Paul, he started writing essays filled with mysterious, often perplexing advice for startup founders, such as, "The most successful founders do not set out to create companies. They are on a mission to create something closer to a religion." Or here's another. "A big secret is that you can bend the world to your will a surprising percentage of the time. Most people don't even try." In a blog post called How to Be Successful, Sam told founders that they should, quote, "have almost too much self-belief. The most successful people I know believe in themselves almost to the point of delusion." That last point will sound familiar to people who know Sam. One of them told me that Sam has complete self-belief, that Sam gives off the impression that he believes in himself 100%, without that nagging feeling most of us have, like a little voice of fear or uncertainty. And here's Lowell again, the former Boost Mobile executive.
He was extraordinarily self-assured, and not in an egotistical way, but just very comfortable with himself, with his capacity, both intellectually and relationally.
For years, Paul had built up Sam's image, made him this kind of startup demigod. Then he decided to anoint him fully. Paul stepped down in 2014 and named Sam president of YC. This was a big deal. YC is the center of Silicon Valley, and now Sam was its leader. He was 28 years old. With both Peter Thiel and Paul Graham, Sam cultivated these close relationships with people in positions of power. Then they gave him things like money, connections, influence, titles. Essentially, they transferred some of their power directly to him. And that, in turn, gave Sam the ability to think big. Even when he was working on something pretty silly-sounding like Looped, Sam had sky-high ambitions. Paul noticed this. Here he is at a conference explaining why he picked Sam to be his successor at YC.
"It's turned into this giant thing, and I'm no good at running giant things. Sam, however, is going to be good at running a giant thing."
At this point, there was no evidence Sam could run a giant thing or even a medium-sized thing. But once he took over, Sam did make YC much bigger than before, sprawling. He gave more money to more startups, and he expanded overseas.
The Sam Altman era at YC was about expansion.
That's John Coogan. He's a startup founder who went through YC twice, including once for his company Soylent. You know, the one that made food powder for tech people.
YC went from, a summer program for startups with just a couple companies to doing all sorts of things. Venture investing with the Continuity Fund, nonprofit work with YC Research. There's definitely a feeling of like, okay, how much should YC really be doing? Should this organization be doing everything?
During his time at YC, John noticed a couple things about Sam.
He's very good at switching gears and listening very intently. I think that's really like a superpower. I heard someone describe him as the Michael Jordan of listening.
A lot of people have described this intensity of Sam's to me. When he listens, he also stares. It can almost feel unsettling. And now that Sam was running YC, he could become kind of a covert operator. He had all of his deal-making skills from his Loop days, and now his network and influence was way bigger. If there was ever a problem, he could make a call and fix it fast.
Very early in my business career, I had a very tough negotiation going on, and I wrote Sam this email saying, like, "Hey, I'm in this negotiation. I just want to reality check some stuff with you." And he called me immediately. We talked for like 5 minutes and he completely solved my problem. And it was like one of the best business deals of my life. It was like actually left a really, really like big impact on me. I've personally seen Sam resolve a $100 million issue in a 30-minute phone call, 15-minute phone call. It's really remarkable. And I think Sam just thinks about it in human terms. It's like, this person wants X, this person wants Y. How can we bring these two people together?
YC was growing, but Sam's ambitions were even larger. When he became president, he started taking on pet projects. One of his interests was nuclear fusion. To encourage more people to build startups in this area, he expanded YC's scope to include hard tech startups. That is, companies building tech where there's some doubt that it'll work at all. Until that point, YC had been almost exclusively about internet software. He also spun up a research arm at YC and assigned researchers to projects he wanted to explore. One example was universal basic income. The idea is to give every person a regular income regardless of whether they work. So under Sam's command, YC created a study to give money, no strings attached, to families in Oakland. This move is one that Sam turns to often. He'll have an idea for something he thinks should exist, and then he pulls in people and money to encourage someone to do it, bending the world to his will, as he wrote in his blog. He's kind of like the maestro of an orchestra, not playing the instruments himself, but conducting his symphony. And in 2015, he'll have the chance to do this again. This pattern of finding an important topic, then arranging to get the right people and the right money on board to build it. This time, the focus is AI. It'll all take place at a dinner that'll change everything. We'll be right back. Okay, here's a bit of Silicon Valley lore. It's often told that in 2015, Elon Musk was worried. Or at least Elon was going around telling everyone he was deeply distraught over the state of artificial intelligence. Back then, the biggest powerhouse in AI was Google. It had so much money, and it had hired all the best researchers. They had Google Brain, and then they acquired DeepMind. It's a British lab that was working on some of the most exciting things in AI at the time. AI that could be more fluid and self-taught. Google's early lead particularly disturbed Elon because he was worried about the possibility that AI could start to grow too powerful, especially if an AI entity began to improve itself. And he was really worried about the guy in charge of it all.
So I used to be close friends with Larry Page, and I would stay at his house, and we'd have these conversations long into the evening about AI, and I would be constantly urging him to be careful about the danger of AI, he was really not concerned about the danger of AI and was quite cavalier about it.
That's Elon on CNBC. I'm always surprised by how casual he sounds when he's telling the story of basically ending a friendship. But he loves this anecdote because it makes him sound smart and forward-thinking.
And at the time, Google, especially after their acquisition of DeepMind, had 3/4 of the world's AI talent. They had obviously a lot of computers and a lot of money. But the person who controls that does not, or at least did not seem to be concerned about AI safety. That sounded like a real problem. So, and then the final straw was Larry calling me a speciesist for being pro-human consciousness instead of machine consciousness. And I'm like, well, yes, I guess I am.
At the time, a lot of experts thought the idea of developing AI so powerful that it threatened the human species was laughable. Because AI was still having trouble distinguishing between a picture of a chihuahua and a picture of a blueberry muffin. But to Elon, it was a real threat. Here he is speaking with Walter Isaacson at a conference. He sounds serious, even alarmed.
I don't think most people understand just how quickly machine intelligence is advancing. It's much faster than almost anyone realizes. Even within Silicon Valley, people really have no idea.
Why is that dangerous?
If there's some digital superintelligence, particularly if it's engaged in recursive self-improvement and its optimization or utility function is something that's detrimental to humanity, then it will have a very bad effect. It could be just something like getting rid of spam email or something. And it's like concludes, well, the best way to get rid of spam is to get rid of humans.
But why would we lose?
The source of all spam.
I know we've all watched Cal in 2001.
The audience actually laughed at him. because what he was saying sounded so outlandish at the time. So Elon was increasingly feeling like he had to do something to dilute Google's power. But he might have also been driven by something else. Here's Ashley Vance, my colleague at Bloomberg, who wrote a biography of Elon.
2013, Elon was not the guy we know today. I mean, he was doing okay, but Tesla was kind of just barely starting to hit its stride. SpaceX was doing pretty well. Elon was worth probably a few $1 billion, definitely not the richest person in the world.
Elon's friends at the time were among the richest people in the world. Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the co-founders of Google.
I was interviewing Elon a lot then. I was working on a book about him, and it was clear to me that he was looking over at his friends who were doing really well at everything they did, and they had these software empires and this growing AI empire. And my sense of where Elon's thoughts about AI started to originate was part jealousy. I thought he looked at Google and all the success it was having and the success his friends were having, and he had nothing like that. But he would never admit this out loud, that he was jealous.
Okay, so AI was top of mind for Elon. And in 2015, he attended this dinner at the Rosewood Hotel. It's this swanky place on Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, right near some of the biggest venture capital firms in the valley. There were about 10 people at this dinner, but for our purposes, here are the 4 most important ones. There's Elon, there's Sam, then there are 2 other people, Ilya Sutskever and Greg Brockman. Ilya worked at Google and was a really well-respected researcher in AI. And Greg had been one of the most important people at Stripe, taking it from a team of 5 people to a company worth billions of dollars. At dinner, they talked very seriously about AI and the threat that it could be misused or that it could lead to catastrophe. They talked about what it might take to build something that could compete with Google. They had the pieces there. Ilya's AI skills, Greg's operational experience, Elon's money. And Sam was there to orchestrate it all. At that dinner, Elon pledged to put $1 billion toward this project. He came up with the name, too. You can hear the pride in his voice when he describes the idea on CNBC.
OpenAI refers to open source. So the intent was, what was the opposite? What's the opposite of Google? Would be an open source nonprofit, because Google is closed sourced for profit, and that profit motivation can be potentially dangerous.
So that's the birth of OpenAI. They had an initial vision. OpenAI would be a research lab, and it would share its work openly with the public, instead of trying to keep it private for its own gain. And it would be a nonprofit, not focused on enriching the company, but instead focused on building a safe AI that would benefit humanity. It sounds good in theory, but those nonprofit, open-source ideals were about to get complicated fast. OpenAI's co-founders soon found themselves locked in a power struggle, and then urgently racing to raise billions of dollars. And Sam would come out on top again, in a way that cemented his power even further. That's next time on Foundering. Foundering is hosted by me, Ellen Huet. Sean Wen is our executive producer. Molly Nugent is our associate producer. Blake Maples is our audio engineer. Mark Millian, Ann Vandermeer, Seth Fiegerman, Tom Giles, and Molly Schutz are our story editors. We had production help from Jessica Nix and Antonia Mufarech. If you want to binge the whole series right now, go to Bloomberg.com and hit subscribe. Then connect your Bloomberg.com subscription to Apple Podcasts for early access. See you next time.